Hello, everyone. I'm Divya Mohan, a principal technology advocate at SUSE. And this is yet another episode of Rancher Live, wherein we bring in experts from across the ecosystem to talk about a topic of their choice, which we think will be of interest to our audience. That's you. Before we go ahead, if you've already been here, you know the next couple of minutes are devoted to um, setting the ground rules. And they're fairly simple. Essentially, we're here to learn, and learn or know more about a project, really, or a topic of the speaker's interest, really. So if in the learning environment you do have any sort of questions that come through, please feel free to enter in the comment section any questions that you might have for our expert. We will get to them at the end of the session so that we can maintain the flow of questions and answers. But if when you're actually asking these questions on chat or wherever you're tuning in from, please make sure you actually are courteous to the other members who are also tuning in, and refrain from any abusive or harassing comments in the chat box. We would not really want that when we are learning about a new thing, and it would not really be conducive to the learning environment itself. So, setting the context for today, AI is no longer something that is novel. It's been around for a bit, but it's also something that people are getting used to. And by people, I also mean the people who employ us, organizations as well. So there's a lot of confusion and chaos around how AI can be adopted or adapted to the enterprise context, and how can we do so securely? How can we ensure it is relevant to our specific scenario? We have a lot of questions around that, and it's but natural because it's a technology that's fairly nascent. So we are learning more and more about it, and in this ecosystem there are a lot of projects. If you just type in AI projects or open source on Google, you're probably going to come up with a lot of search results. But this today's Rancher Life is going to be about opea. And we have Katherine Druckman from Intel with us, and she's also the SIG security lead for opea. So, welcome, Katherine, and thank you so much for agreeing to be here today.
Thank you. This is exciting. I know we've gotten a chance to talk a few times on the podcast that I do, so I'm really happy to come and chat with you in your own turf, on your home court.
And for all those who don't know, Katherine's a fantastic podcast show host. I've had the privilege of being on her podcast, and she's a fantastic show host. If you are interested in learning more about the open source ecosystem in general, she hosts Open at Intel podcast. Yes, am I getting that right?
That is correct. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. So anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can actually find that. So Katherine, first up, I feel like we should, do a fair round of introductions, because I'm certainly interested in hearing more about your open source journey, because you interviewed me on mine. So
that is fair. Fair is fair.
It's just fair that I ask you about yours.
That is totally fair. Yeah. So, gosh, so I got my start in open source, and I want to say it was around 2005. Now, to be honest, a little bit before that, I had dabbled a little bit. I think I had installed a Linux distribution, here and there, dabbled. But in a more serious way, I got involved in around 2005 because I was trying to build a website for some random project that was not related to anything technical. But I was like a hobby project. I wanted to build a website. And I asked a friend who was a technologist for some recommendations for an open source content management system. I barely understood what that meant, but I had read on the internet that I should find one of these open source content management systems. So I evaluated several of the recommendations. I tried building with at the time, I don't even know if it was Joomla. Was it Mambo or Joomla? Anyway, I definitely tried Joomla at one time. I tinkered with WordPress, and I settled on Drupal. So I started building a website with Drupal, and then I started building more websites with Drupal, and then other people asked for help with websites with Drupal, and I built more and more and more. And then I went to work for a Linux journal, building and maintaining a very large website with Drupal, and getting, kind of building up my skills there. And because of Linux journal, getting more and more involved in meeting people from various open source communities, but especially in the Drupal community, because I had a dual role, right? I was there on behalf of the magazine, kind of covering Drupal, but also as a user, and then ultimately later became a Drupal engineer after the magazine effectively shut down. I took an engineering role in like the Drupal company. So at that point, I was a paid contributor to the project, which is a dream. Felt like kind of a bucket list item, So I became a contributor, and then I started working. I transitioned into working actually with some cloud native technologies. Got my feet wet in things like Kubernetes and Helm and Argo. So that's been a long journey. And then I had always kind of identified myself as an open source evangelist, because that's just who I am, because of my many years at Linux Journal and my involvement in various things. And I saw a job posting that had that as the title. And I thought, well, but that is me. So, so that's how I ended up at Intel. And I've been at Intel for about 3 years, evangelizing open source, getting involved in open source communities on behalf of Intel, participating in projects, creating content. It's a lot of fun.
And obviously hosting a very fantastic podcast show as well.
Yes.
So
well, I don't know. I hope it's fantastic. It's actually my third podcast. So we started a podcast in 2018 when I was at Linux Journal, and then I also co-hosted a lot of Floss Weekly. So I've done the podcast thing for quite a long time. My voice is holding up, though, so that's.
I'm going to take some tips from you after the live stream gets done, probably, on how to have that voice after such a long period of
water.
So coming to the topic for today, opea, what is it? And what are some of the problems that it solves? Because I know that AI is ubiquitous, and we don't have a way out yet.
No, everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to get their feet wet.
Yes.
So I think the problem. So backing up a little bit. So OPA was created by Intel, donated to the Linux Foundation. It is now a project under Linux Foundation AI and Data, and the problem that it solves is that from the Intel perspective, I think we saw a lot of people being mandated to create AI applications or add AI functionality to existing applications, sprinkle some AI on it, and everything will be fine and profitable. So, but I think people are struggling. Like there's this great dream of revenue and success and growth that comes with AI functionality. But I think that, the premise that we started from is that we understood based on feedback that enterprises are really struggling to find that value because of a lot of reasons, right? Lack of expertise, lack of standardization. We're all kind of pioneers. There is no standard way of doing these things yet. As with any technology, it's funny when you said the word expert earlier, I was thinking, well, are any of us really experts ever? I kind of feel like we need to humble ourselves because our knowledge kind of becomes irrelevant so quickly and we're constantly learning new things, right? So, we build on our knowledge. So yes, of course there is expertise, but we are right now, we're at this really interesting inflection point. And so experts are expensive, right? AI expertise is very expensive. No standard way of doing things. And so engineers at Intel put together a modular, interoperable framework, vendor neutral set of microservices, really, and reference architectures for people to go in and be able to kind of shorten the path to figuring out how to build these things, arguably, quote unquote, the right way. So that's what it is in a nutshell. Is that we thought, well, open source solves a lot of problems. Open source is the way to solve these kinds of problems of what is the right way to do a thing? What are the best practices? So you get the smartest people together in a room, you find partners from across the industry, and you say, okay, well, let's stop reinventing the wheel and let's, come together and figure out the solution. So that's, if I had to say what problem it solves, that's what I would.
And you also spoke to, why it's important to have something of this nature today, because like I said, I think in the introductory statement as well, a lot of organizations are struggling, and they're basically just like throwing darts blindfolded at like.
Yes, that's a really good. Yeah, stabbing in the dark, quite literally. Yeah, because again, it's the same thing. I'm sure there are a few true AI experts out there, but a lot of people who are having to solve these problems just aren't. They aren't that they don't have that level of expertise. Maybe you're pivoting from developing some other type of application, and now here you are. You're like, oh, you need to go build a chatbot. You're like, but I don't know how to build a chatbot. Well, so that's one of the things that we're trying to solve. We have a specific example for here's how to build a chatbot. Put in some environment variables, run the thing, and there you've got the start the scaffolding for a chatbot. So that's the kind of thing that we hope people will get out of the project.
Right. So talking about the project itself, what are the core components of opea as a project? Like, when we talk about any technology, any framework, or any tool, there are some things that are core. What is that when it comes to opea?
Yeah. So the repo itself is the important repos in the project are the Gen AI examples and then the components. Yep. So the examples are really where you want to go when you're getting started. The examples are, I believe there are still 22 examples of it's demo applications, really. And that's how you get started out of the box. You have things, again, I mentioned the chat Q&A example. You have code generation examples. I believe there's a visual computing, a visual chat, a translation. There are a bunch. And so those put together, the components. Now the components are made up of things like data prep microservice and embeddings microservice and all of the type of things you need to build these generative AI applications. Now it focuses on RAG applications, which is, if anyone's not familiar, retrieval augmented generation. Actually, I'm surprised at how much that's becoming it's not jargon anymore. It's kind of common knowledge. People like, yeah, you don't have to explain that to me anymore. Whereas like not so long ago you did. And I find that really interesting. So it's really focused on building applications of that sort. We're not so much the model training, but building on top of existing models and providing that context. So that's basically, it's designed to be kind of like a pile of Legos, but really well organized, really well thought out Legos that you can, you can swap out a database, you can swap out, a vector store, you can swap out frameworks and that kind of thing. So it gives you choice, but it also gives you a starting point and a basic scaffolding to put stuff together.
Right. So these are the examples. I think you mentioned the other core component as well, Gen AI comps. I think I'm not sure.
So those are the building blocks that go into the examples. So the examples kind of depend on those building blocks. So, the most, I guess, interesting, the one that we always use as sort of a starting point, it tends to be that chat Q&A because it has a significant collection of those microservices that it uses and wraps them all together. Out of the box, it kind of wraps them in what we're calling a mega service so that it can communicate with the user interface. So that, again, you need it's kind of a useless chatbot if you can't use it. It's meant to be used by humans, so it does need that user interface. So yeah, so that's basically what it does, is it takes those components, gives you an opinionated blueprint for how to put them together, and gets you up and running with some kind of basic demo that you can then kind of run with.
Right. And all of this is open source, and
Yep.
basically, people can come in, contribute, and sort of help build in the open
Yeah.
with cloud, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the contributions have been enabling support for various components, right? If you have a project, again, vector database, a really good example. You want to add support for whatever the thing is. Those are the types of contributions we really enjoy and appreciate, because again, the more different pieces are supported, the more useful it is to the most number of people. So,
and the more comprehensive it's going to be.
yes, for sure. Adding support for guardrails, adding for support for various frameworks and that kind of thing. So yeah.
So I want to see if there are different, like, at least in the Kubernetes project, I know that there are different focus groups, if I can call that, for different things. And I know that you mentioned, and I know it because we've talked before about this, that you're the security lead for opea. What is it dealing with in the context of opea, and why is it important as of today?
The different working groups, you mean?
Yes, but like specific to opea, what are the working groups, and why
Sure,
is security that you're part of actually important today?
Well, I'm biased. I have become a bigger and bigger security nerd over the last several years. So I always explain it to people, like, what attracted me to security was just fear. When I was releasing software that people actually used in production, I shouldn't admit this now, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think I ever really felt super confident, I felt confident enough to release the software, but always at the back of my mind, I was kind of hyper focused on security. There's a sense of like stress that comes out when anytime there's like a vulnerability that I quickly need to patch, or a new release of a security release of a dependency, I would race to get that thing out, right? Because I felt this huge burden that people were using the software that I was tagging for release, and then it's in my hands that thing needs to be secure. And so I think for that reason, I was attracted more to that security focus. Because again, it's the kind of weight on your shoulders of being an engineer releasing software. So that's how I kind of, when I came into Intel, I started getting more and more interested in open source security groups and projects. So I became very involved in OpenSSF. I actually co-chair marketing and also the developer relations committee over there. So I kind of became our team's resident security nerd. So it was kind of a natural extension for me to jump in and try to drive this charge on security for the OPA project. So the importance, it's twofold or multifold. So one is just focusing on security best practices for the project, right? And there's some cross-pollination there. Like we're trying to bring in some best practices that we learned from folks at OpenSSF. So OpenSSF has things like the security scorecard, the OpenSSF scorecard, and the new OSPS baseline and stuff like that. And then so we're trying to bring that knowledge to the project. And then the other thing that's interesting is I think that people in the community are really looking for places to have this conversation about the intersection of AI and security. So some of it's just become that kind of discussion. Like, what is it that we really do need to focus on? How does the threat model change when we're talking about generative AI applications? What are the new attack surfaces, and what's the delta between how we think about security for generative AI applications versus traditional application security? It's a completely new animal. You've got models, you've got inference, you've got a simple input field is no longer a simple input field. It's a prompt. And what can you do with a prompt that's different? The output, it's not this deterministic, think about how you used to write tests. I mean, you still do, but how you write tests, right? How I used to write tests. I don't do that so much anymore. But, you given X, Y, and Z condition, you expect Y output, and it's very predictable. If it doesn't give you that exact output, it's broken. Now, well, okay, how do you do that? I don't know. I mean, maybe I need to learn that. So it's just a different world. It's a different, where you're looking at things from a different angle. And so I think the group has become also a place for just that kind of open conversation, which I really enjoy and appreciate. In the process of moving forward, the security of the project.
So you mentioned, being a security nerd and this being a very natural pivot for you. So what are the other working groups that are there within OPEA that people could potentially look at getting involved in as well? Maybe not everyone's a security nerd like you. So are there any other working groups that people
Yes.
can be involved in?
There are. So if you go to opea.dev, it'll take you to a wiki and it has more information on this stuff. But there's a developer experience working group, which we both know is a very important topic. If you don't have a good developer experience, adoption might be a challenge. Then we also have the end user working group. There's a community group, an evaluation group. I'm not entirely sure what they do. I've never sat in on those. The security working group, of course, that I'm a part of, and a research working group. So those are the main working groups now. Who's to say? I mean, more may spin up. You never know. If you're interested in coming together, joining the project, and creating a new one, I'm sure we'd love to hear about it. There's also a Slack channel under LF AI and Data, just OPA General, where you can just get general information too and see what else is out there.
Right. And you mentioned all of the things about getting involved. So I don't have to ask that question anymore.
I know, right? I've covered it. I'm like, please join us. Come hang out with me.
Questions and just are like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to tell her everything.
This is the problem. This is the problem with like podcast host to podcast host. We like interview each other or we interview ourselves while we're talking.
So, one, I would like to ask a question that you probably might not have thought of. You mentioned the example section and stuff like that. So, I am very interested in understanding how how people can actually contribute to it. I know that people talk about contributing to the security aspect of it, but also like, what exactly are they contributing to in like a larger perspective? Like, is it a code base? What is it? I understand that it's a GitHub repo. I understand that it's a thing, but like, is this how is this exactly enabling organizations? Are there any success stories that you have that you can share at this point about OPEA being adopted somewhere? And
can I share anything? That's a really great question. I think a lot of the implementations are not anything that I can share, unfortunately, because I've asked this question internally before too. But in terms of contribution, sorry, the first part of your question is about how to contribute. So there's a few different answers. So for the security angle, the contribution comes in a lot of different forms, right? Some of it is we're kind of talking through some recommendations, trying to put together a bit of a threat modeling framework to try and figure out what is different and what we need to look at. And once we put that together, and we would love contribution to that, we can then turn that into something that is publicly available and can benefit everyone. And then the other thing is just for the product itself, right? Creating these issues. If you look at anything that Scorecard comes up with that may be something we can improve, well, create an issue for that. Even creating an issue is contribution, right? If you run into a problem and and not security related, talking about the broader project, anything, if you say, hey, I'm really curious about this project, I too would like to build a chat Q&A, application, and I'm going to try this demo app. Well, if you go in and try, and whatever environment you're in, if you run into trouble and you can't find the answer in the documentation, open an issue. That's a great way to contribute. So that's that. And then the other thing is, if you're a project lead on something that could be a piece of the OPA puzzle, and you want to add support for that, again, it's a really great way to contribute. But in terms of success stories, I don't know. I mean, the project is a bit young. The type of success that we're seeing, or that I'm hearing, again, I'm kind of in my own little bubble here, focusing on security. I'm not out there talking to customers or partner customers or any of that, but I know that people are very excited about it. The type of feedback that I've heard, again, from being at open source events and just talking to people, is people do feel like it solves a problem for them, because people really are, like you said in the beginning, kind of stabbing in the dark, throwing darts at a dartboard, and they see this as something they can grab a hold of and that can really help them. It's so that's the kind of, from my angle, from a kind of an open source community angle, that's what a success story looks like for me. When people respond positively and get excited that something solves a problem for them, or even answers questions that they have. Where do I start? That's, again, from my perspective, what success looks like.
Right. I'm like, I know that it is very young, because right now AI I feel like it's been around forever, but I'm pretty sure it hasn't been around forever. So I understand that there aren't enough, how do you put it, enough stories to talk about yet.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is weird, right? AI is not new, right? We've been talking. I mean, we all use Siri, or maybe we don't, but a lot of us use Siri. I mean, there's hidden AI all over the place that we don't even think about in kind of mundane areas. I like to throw out things like, we all love to talk about the really exciting, innovative stuff in medicine and things like that, diagnostic medicine, but we don't think about just the kind of basic stuff like, I live in Houston, Texas. It's a lot of oil and gas here, and it's used for things like looking at oil wells. You have a camera pointed at a drill bit or something, and there's some kind of AI locally evaluating whether things are going well or not. And we don't think about things like that because that's not maybe as glamorous as something else. And it's been around a while.
Yeah.
And now we want to talk about, well, chat GPT is all, well, that was maybe last year, but now it's something else. But that's what has really taken off in people's minds as being the exciting AI.
Yeah. And that's precisely, I think, why opea is very well positioned, in my opinion, to sort of grow as a project. Just from like an observer's perspective, I've personally never contributed to it, just like fair disclaimer. So I just feel like it's at the right place to provide the guidance and the framework so that things can be built safely and adapted correctly to an enterprise and an organizational context without people just like randomly coming up with stuff. So I think there's a very great project and people should definitely check it out. I will leave the comments section with the details of the opea project. Katherine, you'll have to share with me the Slack channel. Yes. And other stuff so that I can leave it on the comment section for our viewers. But I think as we're coming up on time, any other shout outs that you would like to give to with respect to the opea project? This is your chance, Katherine.
Oh, shout outs?
Yeah, any other shout outs that like you want to give? The GitHub repos there. Are there any mailing lists that people should subscribe to?
Yes. So if you go to opea.dev, you can get to all of these the working groups. In particular, the security working group is if you go to the GitHub page or the GitHub repo, github.com/opea-project/security-working-group. So that's the security working group. You can sign up for the mailing list there.
Right.
And I think there should be a link to the Slack channel
Yep.
and a link to the meetings. So that's how you get involved in that. And then opea.dev can point you at all the other areas and documentation. And also, again, obviously the GitHub repo. So yeah, I mean, those are the best places to start. The other places are just, follow the project on things like LinkedIn. There are a lot of updates, release information. They do some OPA live streams too, where you can learn more about the project. A lot of my colleagues are producing a lot of content and informational stuff about getting started. We have a bunch of workshops. In fact, we have a workshop coming up at Open Source Summit.
It's in Denver.
That is
We
in
need to-
Denver.
Yes,
Yeah.
we need to mention that because there's another one.
There are so many. I know, right? I keep forgetting, right? We have so many open source. But yeah, the one coming up in Denver, we'll have a workshop getting started with GraphRag, actually, in that case. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities to learn more and to kick the tires and take it for a spin.
Yeah, and I think with that, we're up for 30 minutes. No, and I don't want to keep you longer because I do know that you have other commitments as well. So, thank you so much, Catherine, for coming on and talking to us about OPEA today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm looking forward to bothering you a little more at the Open Source Summit in Denver about stuff that's around OPEA and potentially trying to get involved as well. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. I had such a good time.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.